Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live Learning. We're just going to take a moment to let all of our guests and participants join our room. Great to have you with us this afternoon. Super excited for an awesome chat today. We are recording, so just a reminder that this will be available through our post-program email for you to watch. We know lots of people like to watch this at a time that's a little bit more convenient. I'm sure a bunch of you are probably in the car on the way home or dealing with the post-school pickup, all those sorts of things. But we are really pleased that you're with us today. Live Learning is our professional development series, where we highlight cool people doing really cool things with our thinkers and doers on lots of different topics. And today's topic is about careers education. And we're going to be talking about an era where young people are expected to prepare for jobs that don't yet exist. And we're going to hear from two amazing guests that I'm going to introduce in a short while, who are going to talk through lots of great strategies and practices and great things happening in schools. I'm joining us on the lands of the Yugara and Turrbal people from Brisbane, Meanjin. I'd love to know where you are from. So if you are able, if you can jump in the chat and let me know the lands that you're joining from, introduce yourself, say hello, and we'd love for you to join the conversation today. So I'll give you a moment in the background to let us know where you are from. Throughout the session today, we are really interested in what you have to say. So if you have any questions of what you'd like to know, if you've got a resource you'd like to add, if you've got any aspect of the conversation that you would like to be part of, please jump in the chat at any time. We will be monitoring the chat in the background, and we'll add all of your recommendations, resources, and strategies, and everything that comes up in today's chat will be added to the email post the session. So I can see that we've got some people joining us from all over the country. Welcome, and thanks for being here. While you are in the chat, if there's one thing that you would really love to know from today's conversation, if you would like us to dig into something for you, please add it into the chat, and we will make that part of our conversation where we can. What I'd like to do straight away is introduce our guests for today's Live Learning series. We've got two wonderful guests doing wonderful things in this in the world of this topic. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Kirstene, co-founder and managing director at myDESIGN Education. She has spent her career designing and leading innovative programs that center on self-discovery and purpose. Kirstene, I'd love for you in a moment to jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and I'd love you to weave into your answer this question. Why do you think career education is so important? And I'm curious, what drew you into this space?
Thanks so much for that intro, Dan. So my name is Kirstene. I always say my parents stitched me up because no one could get that name growing up. So everyone just calls me KC, which is my initials. So welcome to refer to me as that. My background is in high school teaching, but I was always drawn to schools that were challenging the status quo and doing things differently. And then that first school that I started at was actually a trade school. So it was where students were completing their high school certificate or the equivalent. I'm based in Sydney. And so they were doing that whilst also getting the first year of their trade or like traineeship. And I just loved seeing that connection between school and the workforce. And so I assumed that a lot of students that would come into that school were really lit up by their trades. They really wanted all other pathways that they were pursuing. And I would say about 50% maybe were, but other 50%, they just picked something for the sake of picking it. They weren't really that connected to it. And then that was actually affecting their motivation in class. And so I started to get curious around, well, how can we, how are they even meant to know what they want to do in year 10 when they're making these decisions? And so that led me to studying my grad cert in career development. And I'll connect the dots and a little bit around some of the concepts I learned in that. But yeah, that was just really following my curiosity, seeing a real need for career education in schools, but also just this fire in my belly that like we spend so much of our lives at work that it doesn't make sense for me to not work in a way that we love. And so I think it was just kind of fusing the two together, the curiosity around career development, but also this fire that we all deserve to work in a way that we love because it's just such a big part of our life.
I absolutely love that. And, ultimately, wouldn't it be great if we could just set that fire for so many other young people in the way that you're talking really passionately around the work for you? Thank you. We've also got with us Lucy Sattler, founder and career counsellor at Study, Work, Grow. Lucy is at the forefront of career education, translating workforce trends into accessible, engaging resources to help navigate the future of work. Lucy, once again, I'd love for you to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and your work, but also I'm curious to know how you might have seen career education shift and change over time as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan, for having me. So, as he said, I'm Lucy. I have a Master of Educational Studies and I'm a qualified career counsellor. I've just started my PhD in the topic as well, so a QUT, so I'm very involved in the space. I run Study Work Grow most of the time, and what we do is we provide lots and lots of different career education resources, guides, tools, newsletters, calculators, all sorts of different things for schools, universities, and training providers all over the world. I've been here for a while, since 2009. That was when I started in this space. So it has changed quite a bit. Back then, there was very strong focus on university. A lot of our schools at the time didn't want us to talk about apprenticeships and vocational learning, whereas that's really pivoted. Now we've really seen a complete shift in the space. There was very little entrepreneurial learning, very little really out there other than the university pathway. That was kind of all we really talked about. But now I feel like young people have way more opportunities to try a wider variety of things, both while they're at school and then when they first leave school as well. And so I think that's really changed how we provide career support to young people. We have to be across a wider range of things. And even as teachers, we have to be able to talk confidently about a wider range of pathways.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Lucy, for introducing yourself. And look, again, in the background, now you know a little bit more about our two guests. If you'd like to dig into something specific, please pop it into the chat. We'll continue our conversation and I'll monitor any of the questions that are coming through. So, Kirstene, let's jump into the conversation. So I'd love to ask you the question around some of the really amazing practices that you see happening in schools. I know that you have also worked on the life design program at St. Luke's College, and perhaps you might be able to talk to us a little bit about that model. What are some of the things that you've seen working really well in schools?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it helps to give a bit of context around when I was studying that grad cert in career development whilst I was at the trade school. The very first concept that I was introduced to was the idea of life design or career design, that we are the designers of our own life. And so it actually takes the design thinking methodology and applies it to our lives and our career. And I was just hook, line, and sinker. I loved it. Kept studying that whilst teaching at the trade school. I almost actually tried to redesign my own job at the trade school at the time. But little did I know that there was actually a school only about 30 minutes from me, very innovative principal who carved out time in the timetable from year 7 through to year 10 for students to do a subject called life design. So it just kind of landed in my lap. I had someone send it to me who I hadn't even spoken to for years. So it was quite magical now that I think about it. And so the purpose of that course was that students were first and foremost learning about who they uniquely are. They were unlocking their SIM, which stands for their strengths, their interests, and their motivators. So that was really the foundation of that life design course at St. Luke's. And then it really moved into them doing a lot of passion projects to test out whether something really was an interest for them. I actually used to love when I was teaching it and students would be like, yeah, I'm really interested in graphic design. And they would do a passion project around graphic design and realize they actually don't love that. And I'm like, fantastic. I'm glad that you know that now and not down the track. They also did fantastic entrepreneurial programs as well. So Activate slotted in very nicely within the life design course. And then I guess with that understanding that of their sim through not only self-discovery, but the opportunity to activate it and experiment with it, then they were able to even dive deeper into uncovering their purpose or how they want to contribute to the world as well, and then use that as a real directional piece for picking subjects and then picking careers. So I think what's really cool, what I've seen since I first started studying my graduate and career development, that careers work is becoming more prominent in schools. But I think it's really just focused on expanding students' horizons around careers that exist, which is so important because there's so much research that shows students are just cycling through the top 10 same careers and they've got a limited understanding of what actually is out there. But I think we need to go a step deeper and actually help students to understand who they uniquely are, because then they kind of activate that inner compass to then navigate that space. Because if you start expanding career horizons, it can almost be like so overwhelming because there's so much that's out there. Whereas if we can help kind of get students to tune into that inner compass, then they can be really intentional when they're expanding those horizons. So yeah, so I think that's what's different about the St. Luke's model. It really is prioritizing that inside out approach, giving space for students to discover who they are, experiment, and then expand their horizons with intention because they've got that inner compass online.
Yeah, I really love that. Thank you, Kirstene. And I know that one of the documents that we'll send through as part of our post-program email will be some information around that SIM model that you referenced, strengths, interests, and motivations. Thank you. Lucy, I know that your work in particular has drawn on lots of different research. What are some of the major insights coming out of current research in this space, and how is that influencing the work that's happening in schools?
Yeah, I think it's really important to ground everything that you do within the research. It's sort of like use that, put that on the table and have that as a guide for everything that you are creating. And that's certainly the ethos that we subscribe to. There is a lot of research coming out talking about the changes in this world of work. I know I'm not saying anything new to anyone, but particularly around changes in the types of skills that young people are going to need, maybe less of a focus on technical skills. I've heard so many major employers say they can teach a young person to do technically anything. They can teach them how to use a point of sale system. They can teach them how to, code a particular thing. What they can't teach is them how to turn up on time, how to be reliable, how to ask for help when they need it, how to, take coaching, how to be coached well. So we're seeing a different skill set be required, and that's really changing what young people need to be prepared for. And I'm not 100% sure that schools are necessarily keeping up with that all the time. And we also know they're worried. So young people are really worried. They're hearing about AI, thinking that it's going to take all their jobs, even though the reality is that it's probably going to create more jobs than it actually takes. So it's really important for those of us working with young people that we send them this positive message, help them see that there is a future for them and feel more confident about what they're going to be going into. Because the last point I would make is that young people are going to have to take ownership over their career. That isn't something that we had in the past. It wasn't as big a deal. You could rely a little bit more on an employer kind of guiding you through that process. Whereas now young people today, they're not going to have that opportunity. They're going to need to be in the driver's seat of their careers, making their decisions for themselves, putting their hands up when they need to, and really driving that for themselves. And it's great that there are a wide variety of programs out there that can help them develop those skills, because it is a skill set. It's like entrepreneurship, but for yourself, your own career. So yeah, it's great that we've got some programs out there. We just need more of them.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. We all know, and anyone familiar with the work of Future Anything knows that we also ground our work in the research of the world of work and the future of work. Is there a particular piece of research that you have drawn from over time, and potentially with the shifts in research, and you might have pivoted and tweaked the work? Anything that you can recommend to those listening?
Yeah, there's some great work out there from the Foundation for Young Australians. It's a little bit older now. They haven't updated it for a little while, but it's still really worth reading the New Work Order series. The OECD is doing some absolutely brilliant work. They've just released a new report, and they have a fantastic online dashboard of data that you can dive right into. So The OECD is where I'm leaning towards more now. And I think some of the things that Casey mentioned in terms of that theory, looking at life design and some of the theoretical approaches behind career development, bringing that theory in, because once you can do that, it does give you a bit of a guide for everything else that you're creating.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Lucy. And we will drop those that research base into the thread as well. Kirstene, back to you. I guess what I'm interested to dig into is around industry partnerships. And I guess I'm looking for kind of your experience in how important are those industry partnerships with local businesses, alumni, community groups, and how can they help to create authentic career connected experiences?
Yeah, I think they can be used in so many ways. The first that comes to mind is I love the concept of an expander, which is someone that has got something or is living in a way that we want to live. So it's like I think there's no shortage of people who are working in a way that they don't love. So there's lots of evidence that that is the case. But I would love first and foremost for there to be more stories, more case studies, for students to see people who are working in a way that they love, or working in a way that connects to their strengths, their interests, and their motivators. Because sometimes it can sound a little bit idealistic to speak like this, but I know I'm always building case studies or listing in my phone people that are doing just that. So I think the more that we can draw on people for that reason, the more that students are going to believe it's possible for them. But then on a bit more of, I guess, a practical use as well, whenever the best units when I was teaching at St. Luke's were when students had the opportunity to go and activate their sim, go and do a passion project. But it was always tricky to do that if, let's say, a student had an interest area that was not mine. So if they wanted to do something creative or artistic, I was not going to be able to provide much help with that. So I think the industry piece is so important there, even just being able to engage mentors, super important. But also to pull that design thinking theory in, if we're coming up with an idea for a product or service and we want to prototype with it, we apply that to our careers. Let's say students have come up with a potential pathway that they believe could bring out the best in them, then how can they go and prototype that? So that would be where that industry connection piece is so important. And that might, I think work experience is still so important for that reason, but it's also like even if you had a bunch of industry that were available for students to do an informational interview with and just learn a bit more about what a day in the life or a week in the life of that career involves as well. So many different ways that they can be connected, and so important because again, you can speak a lot about this stuff within your school walls, but it's when students have the opportunity to go and put it into practice or see what it's like in real life that it just takes the learning to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kirstene. It is that authentic connection that is really critical. Lucy, we know that there are really specific processes that occur in schools in Queensland here, the SET plan as an example. But what are some of the ways that career education can be embedded in the day-to-day practice of what we do, as opposed to waiting for a specific 6 weeks where we're going to talk about career education?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate for the fact that we should be talking about career education all year long, and it should start in year 7. It should actually start in primary school. We should be talking about the world of work really early because we want to broaden horizons and challenge stereotypes as they're forming or before they form. When I talk to people about how we can actually embed careers across the curriculum, how can we bring it into the school? The first thing is to start with leadership. I'm not sure if there are any school leaders on this chat, but if there are, advocate for those school leaders to get involved in career education, support whoever is leading career education within the school, because I find that the schools who do career education best, they have leadership on board. It's pretty much the one defining factor is where leadership is on board. The second thing is that if you want it to be an activity that's not just a one-off or a 6-week program, or it requires someone external to come into the school, then we have to talk about building teacher confidence. And teachers are really overburdened. There's a lot going on in the first place. Asking them to do careers on top of everything else can sometimes feel like a bridge too far. So one of the things that we do at Study Work Grow is we try wherever possible to make it easier for teachers to talk about careers. So we give them language frameworks. We've got a typology of work, which is called the Caddy Career Clusters. It just breaks it down a little bit easier so that they're not having to try and stay on top of, 1,000 different jobs. They can think about just 6 ways of working instead. But it is about building their confidence so they can feel comfortable having that conversation. And so that because every teacher's been through university, and so we see this sometimes that they have that kind of bias towards that tertiary pathway. So when they feel a little bit more confident about the other pathways, and sometimes that's what KC was talking about, bringing people into the school who can not just inform the students about what other pathways look like, but also inform those teachers as well. That's when they can be having better conversations in the classroom because it's usually those like micro, I say it's always the micro conversations that are the most important. The times where a student says, "Oh, do you think I'd be good at this, miss?" And the teacher gives an opinion, and hopefully that opinion is positive and encouraging. So then that builds confidence.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you raised there, Lucy, around the confidence of educators to be able to have these discussions and be able to, follow the lead of young people as well. I just want to remind everyone in the background, please send through any of your questions you've got. If you'd like to ask Lucy or Kirstene anything specific, please pop your question in the chat. I guess what I'd like to do for both of you is to take this conversation to perhaps a bit of a community and parent angle now. And I guess think about as a parent or potentially a classroom teacher that's not involved in these conversations at the moment, what might be the little things that can be done potentially in primary school or starting early to build career confidence in young people? Let's jump to you, Casey, first.
Sure. So I think with a couple of things, when it comes to strengths, they're often quite hard for us to see in ourselves. So the more that as a parent or as a teacher, you can reflect back your students or your child's strengths, the more that they're going to start to build that awareness. And then I think helping them use their strengths as their unique route for doing things. So it's just, again, the more we can help students or young people do that in their everyday life now, the more that they're going to be like, oh, if I can do this if I can use my strengths to approach this subject, I can use it to approach my career. So it's almost giving them those opportunities to put it into practice now. But again, it starts with that awareness. So awareness comes back to how can we help reflect back other people's strengths when we see them? And then the next layer to that is how can we help them use their strengths as their unique route to doing things? Also, the interest piece, when students are or when young people are interested in something, how can we help or encourage them to keep investing in those interests? Because the interests really are the breadcrumbs. And so I think sometimes it's about we try and get students to be all the things and enjoy all the things, but it's like, what if we really helped them double down on the things that they're really interested in and allowed the path to kind of unfold there? And I think with students' experience of learning at the moment, the more that students can find meaning and purpose in their learning, the more they're going to see that that's possible for their work down the track. I think as much as when students have a direction for their future, it helps them connect to their learning. I would say when students are connected to their learning, it also helps them connect to a future direction. So they kind of work both ways, and it's kind of a mirror. So if we can, do what we can to ensure that students are connected and finding meaning in their learning by tapping into their strengths, using their interests, aligning with their motivators, then that's going to be something that shows that can feed very nicely into careers that do that too.
Yeah, I love that, Casey. Thank you. Lucy, anything to kind of add to that?
Yeah, I think you kind of summed it up really well, Casey. I'd say we take a slightly different approach when we're talking about primary school age or younger children versus secondary children. There's something that happens at about that time when they transition to high school. Before that, we really want to be just opening their eyes to all of the different possibilities that there might be for them out there, talking about the world of work in a way that's really positive, but also introducing them to invisible jobs, what I call invisible jobs. So the way I usually describe that is if normally, year two, they're going to bring the fire truck into school. Instead of just bringing the firefighters, we say, why not bring the station manager? Why not bring the office assistant? Why not bring the person who's the technician who looks after the fire trucks as well? So there are things that we can do in primary school that really, open their eyes to the wide range of things they might become so that they're not just thinking about those kind of top 10 jobs. And that lays a really great foundation for secondary because when they come into secondary, we know that they start to be more realistic. So they get more realistic with their ideas and they might, especially if they are someone who's disadvantaged, they're much more likely to bring those aspirations down and in line with their expectations for what's possible. So then it's kind of flipped up and it's instead the teachers are there and the parents are there to support them and try to lift them up and try to find ways to make their ideas possible so that They're not limiting themselves when they shouldn't be, when there's no need for them to do so. And that's kind of that really, really key role that you can play.
I really love that around expanding the horizons of those hidden jobs. Really great insight there, Lucy. Something I'm going to take for my own kids at primary school right now, have those sorts of deeper conversations. I love that. A question from the chat. The question here is around where can careers education programs go wrong? What might be a red flag or two that might make that schools may make, or teachers even with their best interests? What do we think? Casey, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's some that we've probably already covered as well, in the sense that maybe they've got a bias towards university, as you said, Lucy, as well. I think that's a really great observation. And I think, yeah, with the expanding horizon piece, I actually love that, yeah, in the primary school space, it is going far and wide. We're showing them all the possibilities too. But I think it's like, if that's the only thing we do in, like, let's say year 10, and we haven't done anything prior to that, that's where I would say things go wrong. It's sometimes like, oh yeah, we'll just take them to a career expo, or we'll have a few guest speakers in, but it's almost then like it's still a very limited perspective. And again, I just think that inner compass is not online, and I'll kind of circle back to this in a little bit, but with the current paradigm that we're working in, it's like actually the safest way that we can help young people to or create safety in navigating their careers is them connected to who they are and then using that as their compass. So I think if we're not doing that, I think, sure, they might find a pathway that, excites them for a period of time, but we know that they're going to have to pivot and change. So if we haven't taught them how to navigate their careers, then what are they going to do in a couple of years' time, if that, when they need to pivot again?
Yeah, very interesting. Lucy, any thoughts?
My first thought when I saw this question was that I think not necessarily that there's anything wrong that happens in career education itself. Like, career educators in schools are absolutely phenomenal and they work so hard. Usually they're doing another job at the same time as careers. It's when I see careers not done as well, it's usually when it's an add-on, when it's something that can be pushed to the side, when it's something that gets tacked onto that last day of term. Let's bring an external speaker in on the last day of term, and that's kind of as far as the career education goes. That's usually not down to the career educator, though. That's usually down to school leadership. So that would be my take, is that the more we can do to embed careers the whole way through, and to not just leave it as the thing that's like the done at the end of the day on a Friday, that's more powerful.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Really great point that you raise is that teachers are working really hard, and we know that a lot of the people in this space are working to do their very best. And I think it is about authentically including this into education and into schools, rather than, as you say, the bolt-on. So we've got a couple of questions coming through the chat as well. Thank you, Natasha. Curious if we've seen some good examples happening in schools. So a model of career education being embedded in curriculum. Lucy or Kirstene, any thoughts around that question?
Lucy, do you want to go first with this one? Because I reckon you've probably seen a couple of different contexts.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a few. One in particular comes to mind. We've been working with a school just outside of Canberra, and they've built career education right across their electives. So they've actually structured their electives and mapped them all to careers. And that way, when the kids are picking what they want to do, it's so much easier for them to see, oh, this could lead me to down this path. And it's not into narrow, the typical jobs. It's into tasks, and they actually use the clusters as a bit of a scaffold for that. But there are lots of different ways that they're going about it in a creative way. It's easy for them. They're a relatively new school. The principal's got quite a bit of free license, so I think that that's probably an unusual case. Much more what we see happening is where you've got career educators sitting down with departments and saying, all right, how can I help you? How can I provide you with guest speakers? How can I provide you with resources? How can I contribute to this particular project that you're working on in science or English or maths or whatever that is? And that seems to be working quite well when we can bring those career educators in to support the departments as they're developing the curriculum, as they're developing what they're going to be delivering. That seems to work really well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Lucy. I guess one of the other questions that raises itself is whether you've got any hints or tips or support that you could offer teachers who may be looking to either manage up or pitch up to leadership in order to try and garner a little bit of extra support within a school. Any hints or tips that either of you would like to share?
Yeah, I think what jumps out to me is that it's the way I see students having direction for their post-school pathways. It feeds into learning and also feeds into their well-being. And so sometimes if we think, well, the absence of having a direction, and that doesn't mean a crystal clear 5-year plan, because I don't know if anyone can really have that, but a sense of hope and excitement for their future and where they're going. If a student has that, that's going to mean that it boosts their well-being, and their connection to learning is going to be so much more evident as well. Or there's going to be those opportunities to connect it to their learning. Whereas, yeah, the absence of that, not having that hope or excitement for the future, it's going to affect how they see themselves, which, if you've got a student who is struggling with their well-being, that's coming into them, that's coming into every classroom with them. And then if they don't have that sense of direction or hope for the future, it's going to be really hard for them to find their learning meaningful, but also like they're I think less, and this is my experience from even the trade school, if they're not excited about their trade, they're not excited about the direction they're heading, they're kind of just like, well, I can't be bothered with anything. That's where we see that apathy really start to grow. So if I was, still teaching in schools and I wanted to expand it, I would say, well, it connects to learning, it connects to well-being, and we know that they're super, super important for schools to prioritize for students.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that this is not a separate topic, right? This is, it's all embedded and integrated. Lucy, did you have any thoughts?
To back up what Casey just said, there is some excellent literature that talks about the role of relevance with engagement, particularly that cognitive and emotional engagement. So if you can go find some of that literature, Connor and Pope is one of my favorites. Stick that on your leadership team's desk, because it spells it out pretty clearly that when learning is relevant, when kids understand why they're learning what they're learning, they're going to be better engaged. And that's for high achievers all the way through to lower achievers as well. So yeah, great. Well done, Casey.
Thank you, Donna. Also in the chat, agreed. Moving away from measuring learning into the capability work is absolutely going to help our arguments. Another question from the chat here. We have the question around a recommendation for any online programs for students to use to help ascertain strengths and weaknesses in order for them to make career decisions.
I love this question, and I feel like I see a lot of schools will, because they are time poor or there's only a limited amount of time that's dedicated towards this career space, it'll often be like, let's jump on, do this quiz and see what careers come out. And again, if I was limited for time, I'd probably be using those tools too. But I think what I have seen time and time again is that students either don't like what the algorithm pops out for them, so then that can also have an adverse effect on them. And so the way that I see, especially when it comes to understanding your strengths and your weakness, your interests, your motivators, it needs to be like a bit of a journey, because if all you're doing is a quiz to get your response, we've all done quizzes. I know I've done hundreds of quizzes to understand my strengths and personality traits, but they don't really land unless I actually do the work to understand them, to apply them, and that takes, intentional time. So I recommend, how do we make that self-discovery journey? How can we scaffold that for students so they can be active participants in that rather than just relying on a quiz? And then, I love them when students have gotten awareness of their sim that they have cultivated from their own journey of going through it. Then pop that into ChatGPT. Can you give me some suggestions? These are my strengths. These are my core interests. These are my top interests. These are my motivators. Can you suggest some career pathways that would align with that? For me, that is still leveraging AI, still leveraging tech, but it's not taking away from that really special journey of helping them understand themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Really love that. Really going deep with what matters to them and what they care about, which is at the foundation of a lot of our work we do as well. Lucy, anything to add?
I feel like we take a slightly different approach because we have a quiz and it is pretty quick and dirty. The reason why we've done it is because we know that not every school has the time and the energy to be able to deliver properly. So there's a lot of scaffolding that we do in before the quiz, and then when they take the quiz is reflective itself, and then in afterwards as well. There are some other good programs out there. There are some good free programs. My Future's got some great resources as well to check out if you haven't looked at them lately. There are, if you type career education online, you'll find stuff. It just depends on what is going to work for your school. And I think that's probably where the time comes in, is like evaluating them and working out what's going to work for your learners, not expecting the same thing to work with every single one of your learners, and then building your program that way.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, really important to make sure that it is contextualized to the school and to the young people. We've got Nick Dyson in the background wanting to jump in and ask a question. Welcome, Nick.
Hey team, sorry, I'm in an Uber, but I needed to throw a question to both Lucy and Casey. I'm really curious. We've talked a lot and about the importance of young people understanding themselves and their motivations. I have this personal belief that sometimes it's just as important for young people to discover what they hate as it is for them to discover what they love. And so this passion-driven approach to careers education can sometimes make young people feel like they've failed at career education because they don't know what they love. Can we dig into that as a bit of a curly one? Like, why should career, and I'm leading the witness a bit, maybe I'll rephrase the question, should careers education help young people experiment with their futures and find what they don't like just as much as it should help them identify what they do like? I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you learn so much more about your interests when you actually figure out what you don't love. And I'll give you a bit of a context at the moment. I've just come off the back of like an adventure retreat in Bali, and the itinerary is like jam-packed. It's got a whole bunch of different things that people do. And one of my favorite things, as my second one I've done, I love to step back and like watch everyone give everything a go. And there'll be some things that people try for the first time and they're like, love it, blows my mind. And there'll be some things where you're like, look, I've tried it, but it's just not for me. And I'm always one to encourage, like, this is great, like great awareness. So I think there's so much merit in figuring out what you don't love, because sometimes that can be our journey to figuring out what we do really enjoy. And when I was teaching the course at St. Luke's, I always used to say that even if students get to the end of the 4-year program there and still don't know what they want to do, but know that they don't want to do list 10 different things, I'm like, that is fantastic awareness in itself. So yeah, that'd be my answer.
Thanks, Casey. Lucy.
Yeah, I'd agree again with everything you said. We know that only about 45% of apprentices actually finish their apprenticeship. One of the ways that we could fix that is by having more work experience before they start their apprenticeship. Go and do a week, see if you like the job. It's not the only, not the only factor. But finding out what's not right for you is so important through career education and while you're at school. That's why we do things like work experience where we can, try trade days, all those different activities, seeing those industry partners, having those conversations, because when you don't do that, you don't know that you don't like it until you've sometimes, unfortunately, paid for a degree, gotten in there and you're 2 years out of your degree, and then you're like, no, this really isn't right for me. And that's a heck of a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy that you didn't need to spend if you could have just gone and done work experience back in year 10. So there are some great programs, and I feel like there's more and more and more of that happening. There are more programs where industry are coming into school. We've got Gateway to Schools programs happening now in Queensland a lot more. So that's where those really come in, is it gives you the chance to say, no, actually, I'm wrong. That wasn't the right idea for me.
And I think with the capability of being agile, to be able to, shift and pivot and be brave to try something and figure out what's working and what doesn't. Thank you. That's really, really great insight. I'm just conscious of the time. I know that we're heading towards the end. I'd really love, though, before we finish, for you to be able to add, what are some of the really practical, tangible tools or resources or things that every educator out there might be able to use? And also, obviously, you both are working in this space. Is there anything that is part of your work that you could recommend as a big takeaway here for a tool or resource or something practical? Casey.
Sure. So I guess to come back to also that quiz piece and understanding self, like sometimes it's like helping people to understand themselves can be an even like more daunting thing because we are so multifaceted and complex. And so that's where using the SIM framework can sort of scaffold that getting to know you process. And it plays on the analogy of we've all got a unique SIM card in our phone, unique identifier. That's why you get your phone calls and messages. I get mine. And so we take that unique SIM and apply it to ourselves. So it's something that students that are super young can grasp, but it's also something that you can use with your senior students as well. And then obviously it stands for our strengths, interests, and motivators. So using that as a framework, of course, there are so many tools and quizzes and things like that that can feed into understanding each element of your SIM. But I think it's just, and I will also say that we've got a strengths quiz that we weave in too. So it's not about not using a quiz. It's just about having students just do the quiz and never look at it again. And that's the part where I think it's easy to get caught up with doing that. But if we can have them engage with the resource, engage with the tool, and then have the conversations after that, that flesh it out and make sure it really lands, that's where I think it's super important. So the SIM framework, I'll send through some resources on that. So people are welcome to use that. And I think what's also beautiful about creating that space for the self-discovery journey, it's that if your teachers are on that journey with the students, then they're really getting to know the students too. And that's where you can then just build such a beautiful relationship. The other sort of, I guess, tool or tip that I would give is to change the question, because it's very easy. And sometimes I've still got to stop myself from asking it, like, what are you going to do when you finish school? The reality is students will do many things. So how can we change the question to what are you going to do next after school? I think just by including that word next, it takes the pressure off students from having to have everything figured out, because nobody does. And they can actually focus on, well, what is my next best steps, and go from there.
Yeah, I love that reframing of the question. Thank you, Kirstene. Lucy.
I think for me, the real value in career education, or like where the good stuff happens, is in conversations. It's not necessarily within a tool. Like tools are just tools. Like we just use, and we can pick up whatever tool is going to work for that particular student or that particular learner. But it's when you're having those conversations. And so like in terms of tools, it's tools that can help you have those conversations. And it might be things like card sorts, or even like having your SIM, like Casey mentioned, or having your caddy clusters like what we provide, or whatever it is. But it's where the good stuff has is those conversations. So I think that when I'm working with teachers, what I try to impart with them is, or try to share with them, are my tips for having good conversations. And so the main one of those is that there's two that I try to lead with. The first one is that it's not our journey, it's the young person's journey. So even if their ideas are a bit wacky, that's totally fine. Let them have their idea and be positive about it, and rather than passing judgment. So that's tip number one. And then the tip number two is that we don't have to have all the answers. So I'm a career development professional. I have qualifications in the space. I do not know everything about careers. I do not know everything about every single job. I have to go and look things up. Sometimes when I talk to teachers, they feel like they should know all this stuff off the top of their head, and they don't. So I say to them, it's okay if you don't have the answers. If a young person comes to you with a question, say to them, great, let's go and look it up together, because I don't know the answer to that either. So when you've got those two tips and you're kind of using them, you can have a little bit more career confidence, a little bit more confidence in your conversations. And that's where the good stuff really happens.
Yeah, completely agree. And those two tips, they go across everything, which is really awesome. Thank you. Hey, I'm curious, Casey, is there a book or a podcast or anything that's relevant for you at the moment?
Yeah, so going back to the life design thread, so that came from Stanford University. So there's some good ones that I can send across to, called like Designing Your Life or Designing Your Work Life. So they're a good place to start. But over time, I've realized that that's the methodology that I have when it comes to careers is it's less about it. Well, it incorporates the design thinking, but it's certainly then like that planned happenstance as well, which I've got to find some resources to specifically speak to that. But it's really helping them to understand that you don't have to have everything figured out. It's all about following those next best steps. And there's a great message in the chat here around curiosity over passion as well. So it's like anything that I would say that really helps students to nurture that curiosity will be a game changer. And I know that that's a really key piece with Future Anything too.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Lucy, are you reader or podcast, or a bit of both?
Not a podcaster. I tune out. I wish I was. Reader, I have read Be Useful, which is Arnie Schwarzenegger's book, in the last couple of months, and I've really, really enjoyed that. I think he really speaks to me, that idea of giving back value, great for educators, great for entrepreneurs, great for anyone who wants to think about how they can give value and add value into their life. I plug for my own. I have a Pondering Careers newsletter on LinkedIn. You can find if you're interested in reading any more about what I talk about, which is mostly young people and the world of work and that kind of thing as well.
Awesome. Love that. Love the tips there. Be useful and Pondering Careers. Wow, time is up already. How amazing was that? We've covered a lot on this topic. I really want to say thank you to you both for taking time out to be with us today. Kirstene is in Bali right now, so check out the beautiful view behind. I really want to say thank you, and we appreciate your conversation, your efforts. We will send through those resources today in a post email. I'm super excited to announce the next live learning on Tuesday, the 22nd of July. The next live learning is Building High Performing Teams with Dr. Pete Stebbins. So we know as schools navigate rising teacher attrition, increasing wellbeing demands, the strength of a school's leadership is really important, never been more important. So how do we build leadership teams that meet expectations, don't just meet expectations, but thrive? So please join me on Tuesday, the 22nd of July with Dr. Pete Stebbins talking all about high-performing teams in schools. But that is the end for today. Look, a big favor right now, if you are with us and you have the ability to turn your video on, I'd love to get a quick snapshot of as many of us as possible in the room. Let's get a photo today, and I'll change to gallery view. Let's try and get as many of us as we can. Welcome to everybody, and let's get that shot. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an awesome afternoon and all the best with implementing careers education in your schools. Big thank you to Lucy and Kirstene, and take care, everybody.